Hello and welcome to our next lesson on this topic of respiration. In the previous lesson, we looked at what respiration was, and more specifically, we looked at aerobic respiration. We said that in this process, oxygen and glucose are needed, and carbon dioxide and water are produced. Today we need to have a think about where these substances come from and how they get to and from the cells that need them. So by the end of the lesson you should be able to describe what the circulatory system is made up of, you should be able to explain the roles of each blood vessel, and you should be able to evaluate what is meant by a double circulatory system. The title today, which you need to write in your books as you would do for any other lesson, is Round and Round. So let's start by saying a key point, okay? Oxygen and glucose, so oxygen and glucose are transported around the body, to cells that need them in the blood through blood vessels. In the blood through blood vessels. Okay, so we've said that oxygen and glucose are transported around the body to cells that need them in the blood through blood vessels. Now that brings us to our first keyword. Keyword is blood vessel. Blood vessel. Now a blood vessel can be defined as a tube that transports blood around the body of an organism. Around the body of an organism. Okay. Now, there are three types of blood vessel that we're going to touch upon very briefly today. To help us understand this, I've prepared a diagram that is found on the lesson slides. So we can say that there are three types of blood vessel. The first one we need to talk about are arteries. Arteries. And arteries carry blood away from the heart. Carry blood away from the heart. We've got veins which carry blood back to the heart. So veins carry blood back to the heart. And finally, the one that we're going to be speaking about in more detail today are what are known as capillaries. Capillaries. That's only one piece, all right. Capillaries. Now, capillaries are slightly different. Capillaries are where oxygen and glucose are swapped from the blood to the surrounding areas. Okay? So For the capillaries, we can say where substances can enter or leave the blood. Now, if we were to think about this, as we said last lesson, one substance that is needed by your cells for respiration is oxygen. So oxygen can enter your blood at the capillaries in your lungs, and it is then dropped off at the cells that need them via the capillaries. So capillaries, we can say oxygen enters the blood at capillaries in the lungs. At the same time, we can say that glucose enters the blood at capillaries in the small intestine. So we can also say that, what colour can we use? We'll go to this one. We can also say that glucose enters the blood at capillaries in the small intestine. Okay, so we've said, that should say glucose. We've said that oxygen and glucose are transported around the body to the cells that need them in the blood through blood vessels. Blood vessels are tubes that transport blood around the body of an organism. There's three types of blood vessel. We've got arteries, which carry blood away from the heart. There's veins, which carry blood back to the heart. And there's capillaries, where substances can enter or leave the blood. We've said that oxygen enters the blood at the capillaries in the lungs, glucose enters the blood at capillaries in the small intestine, and we can say, we're going to go back to red because it's an important point, we can say that capillaries drop oxygen and glucose to cells for respiration. Okay? Now, if we wanted to look at this in a little bit more detail, there's a second image I've got that's on the lesson slides that we're going to use now. So if we turn all this back to black, if we add the image that I want, it's this one. I'll make it a little bit bigger. So this shows the heart pumping blood around your body. There is two loops through which the blood flows. There is one loop that sends blood to the lungs to pick up oxygen. There is another loop that sends blood to your small intestine, your capillaries in your body, to pick up glucose and to drop off oxygen and glucose for cells to carry out respiration. So we can say that the heart and blood vessels consist of two loops. ... We can say one loop sends blood to the lungs to collect oxygen And we can say that a second loop sends blood to the body to collect glucose and drop off oxygen and glucose for cells to use. For cells to use in respiration. Okay. So we've said that the heart consists of two loops. One loop sends blood to the lungs to collect oxygen. The other loop sends blood to the body to collect glucose and to drop off glucose and oxygen for cells to use. Right then. On the PowerPoint, I'll just show you now rather than writing it on the whiteboard. There's a diagram that looks like this. This shows how the oxygen and glucose at the capillaries is released into the cells. The cells use these substances for respiration and they put the waste substances back in the blood, which then takes it to your lungs and your digestive system to get rid of them. Okay? Final bit for today. We can say that oxygen in the blood is carried by red blood cells. Okay, so oxygen in the blood is carried by red blood cells. We can also say that glucose is carried in the liquid part of your blood known as the plasma. The final definition is something you can do at home. Calculating your pulse rate. Now your pulse rate is the number of heartbeats you have in a minute. So your pulse rate is the number of heartbeats per minute. To do this, you simply rest your finger on your wrist where your thumb is. Okay, just below your thumb, and you should be able to feel a pulse. So you can rest your finger on your wrist just below the thumb and count the beats for 1 minute. Your resting heart rate should be, so pulse rate should be between 60 and 100 beats per minute, BPM. Okay. However, some people have it much lower, some people have it much higher. For example, mine is 42. I have a very low resting heart rate. Some people have it very high, over 100. It's nothing to worry about if it's not between 60 and 100. However, the average is between 60 and 100. Right then, so you should now be able to describe what the circulatory system is made up of. It's made up of these arteries, veins and capillaries. You should be able to tell me the roles of each blood vessel. The arteries carry blood away from the heart, veins carry blood to the heart, capillaries allow the exchange of materials between cells and the blood. You should be able to tell me what is meant by a double circulatory system. So it's this idea that one loop sends blood to the lungs, one loop sends blood to the body. What I would like you to do now, please, I know this is a bit blurry, however you can read it. I would like you to have a go at these questions, and then on the final slide, the sixth one, the answers are there. So have a go at these questions. Question 1 says, what are capillaries? Question 1b says, why can substances get into and out of the capillaries easily? Use the notes we've just made, use the internet to find the answers. Make sure you write out the question in your book before answering it, and then answer your work or correct your work using the mark schemes at the end of the lesson slides. If you have any questions, please comment below in Google Classrooms or send me an email. I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Until next lesson, take care.